Richard Anklam is the Executive Director of the New Mexico Tax Research Institute. Richard, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And Fred Nathan is the Executive Director of Think New Mexico. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me as well.
Richard, I want to start with you. The legislature moved surprisingly quickly in the first 2 weeks to fix the hole in the current budget year. That ends in June. What did they do there?
Well, they basically just went into a second special session. They didn't really fix the problem in that last special session that we had in November. Things got worse. Perhaps they didn't do enough given the election cycle and all of that. But that's what they had to get down to the business of when they convened this year, was fixing the current year budget crisis. And they appear to have accomplished that, I think. Perhaps.
Just with a bunch of little nips and tucks and cuts?
Sweeps and swaps and deferrals. Yeah, exactly.
All right. But now they have an even harder job because we have the next fiscal year that starts in July, and we have an even bigger hole there. So what are some of the ways that they are looking at fixing next year?
Well, next year, I think anything's on the table. We still have a deficit. It's worse than what they had to deal with this year. Taxes are sort of on the table. The governor doesn't want to talk about taxes. But certainly it's simple arithmetic. You know, you either decrease costs or increase revenue or a little bit of both to solve your problem. We have to balance our budget one way or the other.
Fred, it's a big crisis. It's a lot of money. People are saying it's the worst they can remember. Does that sound right?
That doesn't sound right because we did have the Great Depression after all, and back then we just had the property taxes and property taxes plummeted. So I think we've seen worse, but in recent memory, I think you're right. I don't think I can remember anything quite this severe.
Now, you know, I was in a committee hearing yesterday, and I understood, I think, about 8% of what they said, and I've been around a while. How transparent is it when they make all these tiny cuts from funds we've never heard of?
It's not very transparent at all to the regular person, and even to someone like you who's, you know, around the legislature all the time. And that may be an issue that bubbles up this session because more and more groups like the League of Women Voters, Foundation for Open Government, are saying we should make this budgeting process much more transparent. And there is too much of a tendency to go behind closed doors, make an arrangement, and then come out in public and ratify that decision. So that's something to watch this session.
Richard, many people are saying that we're too dependent on oil and gas revenue, and that's why we have these crazy crises. How could we protect ourselves from these wild swings in a market we can't control?
We can do a better job of budgeting and showing restraint. What we tend to do is we go through these boom and bust cycles with the oil and gas industry. And when prices are good, all sins are forgiven. We can do all kinds of stuff, some of it not so smart, others, you know, good stuff too. And we forget about the fact that the price will drop again invariably, and that'll cause us a big problem. Our general fund, you know, give or take a third of it comes from oil and gas, directly or indirectly, and that's a big chunk. And so there's mechanisms you can build with good reserves and things of that nature, but it requires discipline, and that's something that, you know, it's hard for politicians to have because everything is a very short-term focus typically.
Yeah.
And we're also, I think that this happens too often, is that there's too much of an emphasis or recency bias where we overemphasize what just happened. So when prices are good, we tend to be overly bullish. When prices are bad, we tend to be overly bearish. I'm sort of skeptical about this assumption that it's a $300 to $500 million deficit because that seems to overlook some things that are going on right now. For example, a few weeks ago, Exxon, another major oil company, spent $10 billion to buy up land in the Permian Basin, which is now considered the most significant oil play in the country. And so that means more rigs. I mean, Exxon's not spending all that money for the landscape. They're spending it because they're going to drill. That's going to create jobs. That's going to create economic activity. So at some point, there's going to be a reversion to the mean. And I just wonder whether things aren't quite as dire as they've been presented.
And we won't know for a little bit. Your big issue last session was infrastructure funding and the process we use to do that. The reforms you wanted didn't happen last year, so you're still on that topic now. You argue that the way we do capital outlay, it's called, is wasteful and inefficient. But how would fixing that system help our economy?
Well, I mean, right now we're going to have this debate as to whether to raise taxes or cut spending, and we're arguing there's a third way, which is to adopt policies that will create jobs. And this is a great example. Right now we're spending a lot of that money on things like wrestling mats, football helmets, silverware for senior citizen centers. We should be spending that on infrastructure, things like roads and water systems. Those create jobs. In a normal year, we spend about $300 million on capital outlay infrastructure. That should generate about 8,100 jobs a year. But because there's no plan, there's no objective criteria, a lot of these projects never happen and the money sits idle on the sideline. So if we create a better process, which we're trying to do with this bill that we'll be introducing on Friday, we think there will be a plan, there will be objective criteria, and that money will get spent. That will lead to more job development.
But it's not going to fix the problem we have right now.
Not right now, but it could start as early as next year if we could pass the bill this year, and it could create jobs for next year.
Richard, lawmakers are under a ton of pressure to cut everywhere they can. But others are saying, we've cut as far as we can go, and we have to have more money coming in. They're talking about things like raising or instituting taxes on gas, liquor, tobacco, things we buy from Amazon and other places online, and on new and used cars. The Chamber of Commerce said that it sees some wiggle room here. They might be able to go for a little something here, but the governor has not yet said that she could, budge from her no new taxes pledge. How can lawmakers and the governor find some compromise here where everyone can save face?
Well, that's easy. We just close loopholes.
We
Things fair, right?
We
That's what
close
wanna do.
tax loopholes. So what does that
Everybody's
mean?
for that.
Well, it's semantics. It's in the eyes of the beholder because we're not allowed to use the T word, right?
Right.
We say revenue
So-
enhancements and things like that.
So if you call it closing a tax loophole, it's not a new tax, but you are raising revenue.
Yes. in
So what are
theory.
some of the loopholes that we might look at?
Well, the remote sales issue, internet commerce, you could brand that as a loophole if you wanted to, I think, because there's fairness issues and issues with local businesses and things like that. But you could also call it a tax increase.
So if I buy a book at a local bookstore, I pay sales tax on it, but if I buy it from Amazon, I don't.
Correct, at
Yeah.
this point in time. And that's not very good for the local business either. So, I know there'll be proposals on that particular subject. The governor doesn't seem to be very warm on that idea, but I think if you wanted to say it's more about fairness and not so much a tax increase, that's an example of something that would be easier to paint that picture.
And businesses could get behind things like that.
Yes, but most businesses are behind that. It affects retailers and a few people outside the state. But consumers don't. None of us want to pay. We're all for taxes as long as we don't have to pay them. That's the problem. And so none of us want to pay tax on Amazon, but we also don't want our local businesses to go out of business as a result. And we need money. So, you don't want a leaky system. Leaky tax systems are dumb, and they invariably implode. So, we ought to fix this. If we don't fix it, it'll fix itself over time. That just won't help us balance the budget the next couple of years.
Are there any other loopholes that we're going to see debated in the coming weeks?
Lots of things that you would call loopholes, or people will. Anyone's project will be a loophole. If you want to increase tobacco taxes, we'll say it's a loophole. If we want to increase personal income taxes, we'll call it a loophole. So I'm being facetious. We want to get away from the semantics and the demagoguery. We have a real problem. We have a fiscal system and a tax system that funds it, and it's all about that system. It's not all about, did we raise a penny here and cut a penny there? That's getting into the weeds. That's the politicians.
We're talking about these taxes on alcohol and gas and cars and all this stuff. There are people who say we need to bring back the tax we used to have on food. You think that's a bad idea?
Yes, I do. But I want to say I agree with Richard. I do think we desperately need tax reform, and I think that's been brought out into the open by the drop in oil and gas taxes. I would just argue that if you're going to do tax reform, and what we need to do is broaden the base by closing legitimate loopholes and diversifying our revenue base. But I don't think that taxing food or medicine or physicians makes a lot of sense. And one thing that Richard says, which I totally agree with, is we need a tax system that looks like other states. And when I look around the country, 34 states exempt food from tax, including all of our surrounding states. So that's part of our system I don't think is broken, but there's lots of areas where I think we can create revenue neutral reforms that broaden the base and lower the rates.
Speaking of surrounding states that tax things, marijuana, Richard. There are several proposals up there this year that would legalize recreational marijuana, and then there are proposals to then tax the heck out of it. If we did that, how much money are we talking about? How much help would that be?
That's a function of quantity and price, or tax rate, right? So I think the Tax Foundation did a 50-state study on that particular question using 15, 20, and 25% tax rates, and we ranged anywhere from 25 million to over 50 in their study. I haven't actually looked at the numbers myself. Colorado's seen better numbers than that, of course, but they have 3 times the population that we have. So you would expect, and they had a bump, some tourism and thrill seekers and things like that. Those kinds of effects go away over time as other states adopt similar laws. So New Mexico wouldn't see that to the extent that Colorado did, but it would still raise potentially money. But it wouldn't raise it today because you have to implement an entirely new tax regime and program regulatory scheme like Colorado did.
And there'll be costs.
There will be costs associated with that, absolutely, and it will take time. So.
But $50 million is a big part of the budget hole that we just had to patch for the current fiscal year.
That's correct.
So where do you think that's going to go?
Well, I don't believe the governor is a fan, and I don't think she calls it a regressive tax increase. I say that as a joke, because it would be. But I think her reasons are crime-related. There's workforce safety issues. There's a lot of legitimate debates to be had around the subject of marijuana. I don't like to start the conversation by assuming that no one smokes it now, because there is a tax base that we don't tax, but you don't necessarily want to encourage unhealthy behaviors either. So there's a good legitimate debate to be had there, but there is money on the table as well. And
we'll be having those exact same debates on a whole host of similar and very different ideas for the rest of the session. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.